Here's the typical path an entrepreneur goes through, or any high income person goes through. You go through time, you make more money, you end up with some surplus. And once you have some surplus, you kind of start looking around like, what could I do with this? And then somebody offers you a product.
Or the marketplace smells out your surplus. You start having
Yes,
people coming in, giving you
that's right.
calls. Yeah.
Yep. And just like the song, I'm not going to sing it because I don't want to get stuck in your head, Baby Shark, these baby sharks show up and just chomp off a little bit of your wealth. Now, some of those things you drop money into will make you money. Some of them may cost you money over time. Here's the real issue. For most people listening, you have already spent most of your life in a cycle of building up assets, then like cash, and then finding a place to put it, or you received cash, inheritance, bonus, large K1 distribution from your company, and you find a place to put it. It could be a real estate deal, might be a financial product, it might be speculating in cryptocurrencies. But each time we do that, we're executing a tactic rather than taking time to sit back, look at the design that was put together for you being able to build a life that has definite financial independence so that you can fund a work optional lifestyle. It's not that. Instead of having that strategy that money gets deployed into, we just pick up another tactic along the road. And all the products that we see out in the marketplace, including this one, really depends on you stitching this in, not as a part of an overriding strategy, but as a tactic that you pick up with whatever amount of surplus you have.
Yeah, we're not going to tell you whether this product is good or bad because the reality is we can't. It has more to do with how it's put into the strategy of your life and how that plays out over time. So you're not going to hear this good, bad zealotry from us today that is really most people just take an opinion on one side or the other of this product is good or this is bad. But we'll give you a metaphor. Is water good or bad? Well,
Depends.
Like water gives life. And if you go too many days without it, like not that many days without it, you're going to die. But not that much water applied in exactly the wrong place in your body is going to cause death. Like you can drown in just a couple tablespoons of water if it gets in the wrong place. So water is neither good nor bad. It all depends on how it is applied.
Yep, exactly. And here's what's attractive about these tools. These indexed products, or what used to be called equity indexed products, which you'll see why in a moment. The industry regulatory side pushed down on these companies, said you can't call it equity indexed anymore. You also see it as fixed indexed. But what it all comes down to is that underlying these, the way they're marketed, they appear like they're going to get equity rates of return. The most common index they're attached to is the Standard & Poor's 500. And while when you kind of look at it or you hear the sales pitch on these, it really seems like you're going to be able to achieve equity-like rates of return, say 7 to 9%. When in reality, they're only likely to slightly outperform fixed income rates of return if the company doesn't change the rules on you, and there are several ways that they can.
So, Paul, let's talk about, or let's rewind just a little bit for folks to really get them connected to what this means. Let's talk about how an equity index product works, which is one, it's connected to an index, say the S&P 500. But here's where we start to diverge from what people think and what's actually happening. Do they actually own any piece of what's in the S&P 500 index if they buy an index product?
Not even a little bit do they own the actual index. So let me give you for instance. The index is this moving of numbers out in the marketplace. And what they're doing, now they are hedging against that index. They're doing things as the insurance company. Incidentally, these are exclusively sold by insurance companies. Almost all publicly traded companies whose fiduciary responsibility at the board level is to the stockholder, not a mutual company whose fiduciary responsibility is to the policyholder. Most of these products in the marketplace, and I mean like 90% of those sold, are being sold by stock companies. So that right there should tell you a little bit about maybe who the greatest benefactor is from the use of these products. Second, let's say we just picked anything else. the migration speed of Canadian geese. We could also tie it to that. Now, that wouldn't give the insurance company the ability to hedge it the same way. But in reality, it's just the movement of a number out there in the world somewhere that you do not own, that your returns that they're going to pay you are tied to.
Now, and no one can actually own an index. And they tell you that all the time. You can't actually own an index, but lots of mutual fund companies recreate the index by helping you buy all the individual stocks that are inside of that index. But you don't even own the individual stocks that are a part of the index or get things like dividends and all those other participations that you normally do by owning it. And that's
exactly
key.
where I wanted to go next, is that if you look at the Standard & Poor's 500 over the last 40 years, depending on the year, 1.5% to 2% of the return of the Standard & Poor's 500 is the dividend paid by the companies in the Standard & Poor's 500. Except because you don't own the index and the insurance company is only paying you based upon the movement of the index in its points. So the point move in the index, it'll either be a 1-month move, a 1-year move. It doesn't matter because you don't own the dividend. So right there, we're losing return as compared to what we have in our head of what the S&P 500 returns. And then we're told in the marketing material, you're participating in the point move of the S&P 500 index. The insurance companies in the marketing material are being ethical in the way they speak it, but the way people collapse it in their minds is incomplete. Now, we also have something that limits how much of the return you get each year. Now, insurance companies do it in one of two ways. They either limit the participation rate in the performance of the index, which might look something like whatever the index gets in its point-to-point return each year, we will pay you, say, 70% of that. Now, remember,
so if it goes up 100%, you only get 70%.
Yeah, exactly right. But remember, we also just lost about 2% a year to dividends. So if it was supposed to produce 11, you're already down to 9, and then you're only participating in 70% of the 9. Now, the other way, and it's a little tricky the way they do it, in the marketing materials say your participation of 100% in the index is guaranteed, except they add a floor and a cap. So the floor says, in any year, you can't get less than 1% return. That's the floor. And then they'll have a cap. Like, you will never get higher than 9 or 7.5 on the index. Now, what you read when you read the illustration in the marketing material, you got to go a little deep to where they step down the font size a bit. It's going to tell you that they can change the cap rate, meaning that cap rate that maybe initially is marketed at 9 can actually be lowered as low as 3. Now, why do they give themselves the ability to do that?
I was just asking, why do they do that? Is it because they think they'll never have to use it?
Well,
no.
And it's because regulatorily, they have to have that flexibility to change it in there because, as I understand it, it would produce statutory bankruptcy for all these companies if they actually said both the cap rate and participation rate are guaranteed, because the amount of hedging that they would have to do would absolutely diminish their reserves to a point at which the National Association of Insurance Commissioners would have a big problem with them and put them into some version of receivership. That having been said, I'm not saying any of these products are bad. We are just working to communicate to you why they can go not as well as perhaps the initial sales story sounds. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and when you get a moment, pick up my book on Amazon, Sound Financial Advice. It's the kind of book that's easy to read, but hard to forget all the knowledge you learned.